Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Just Love Them podcast. I'm your host, Shiree Best. Join me to discover how to stay connected, how to find healing, and how to deepen your relationships with the people you care about who have made different religious choices than you have. Today's episode is part 2 in the Family Estrangement series. The link for part 1, When a Loved One Cuts You Off, is in the show notes, and this episode will make more sense if you have listened to that first episode. It turns out I have more to say. Family estrangement is defined as children or siblings or other family members who decide that they are no longer willing to be in your life. This has also been called cutting someone off or leaving the family or going no contact. Like in part 1, let me again say that there are circumstances when it is legitimately valid for someone to distance themselves from family members. For instance, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, severe toxicity, SRA, difficult narcissism, or a variety of other extreme situations where someone might not be safe, or where great emotional or physical damage is happening. It can be an important reason for someone to estrange themselves in order to protect themselves and heal. But that is not what we are talking about today. Today's episode is a follow-up conversation about family members who use boundaries as weapons without real and valid reasons. In the episode part 1, we talked about healthy boundaries versus unhealthy boundaries, reasons, legitimate or not, why family members might cut themselves off from the family, and some what not to do's and some what to do's when family estrangement occurs. I'm going to be honest, I have not personally experienced this kind of family estrangement, but I have talked to plenty of people who have. Much of what I shared in part 1's episode, as well as in today's episode, is a combination of what I have learned by helping other people and by doing research and seeking the collective wisdom of others. Some of the people I sought wisdom from were coaches and mentors, and some were those who have experienced family estrangement firsthand. I would like to offer special thanks for wisdom shared to those people. You know who you are. Reasons I included in part 1 of this series on why someone might cut themselves off from a family included not being willing to put effort in to make the relationship work, feeling judged, influences from social media, high emotional expectations, polarization, and religious differences becoming intertwined with other complex family issues. I go into much more detail on each of these reasons in the first episode. 2 additional reasons surfaced as I had follow-up conversations with people who had listened to that episode and also had firsthand experience. This is not an exhaustive list, but if you're someone who's experiencing having had a loved one cut you off, or you know someone who's going through this episode may give you additional insight as to possible reasons they might have left, as well as additional information on possible ways to heal from this situation. The first of those 2 additional reasons. It was suggested to me that estrangement can actually run in families. One of the people I talked to told me about looking through their family history and seeing a pattern of grandparents and other family members abandoning the family as far back as the 1950s. When you see patterns, sometimes it feels like this is what our family does. But guess what? There's no estrangement gene. I checked. No such thing. But could there be something that's passed from one generation to the next? As I began researching, I found that while there isn't evidence of a gene that causes people to estrange themselves from the family, there is quite a bit of evidence that relationship patterns can be passed down through generations. One of the biggest reasons is something that researchers called family culture. Every family has unspoken rules about how they handle conflict. Some families grow up believing we're family, we work things out even when it's hard. Other families may unknowingly teach messages like, if someone hurts you, walk away. Or, we don't talk about difficult things. Or, people don't really change. Most of us never consciously decide to believe those things. We simply watch people around us and learn how relationships are handled. And children, they notice everything. They notice whether disagreements lead to conversations or silence. They notice whether forgiveness is practiced or whether people disappears from each other's lives. Those experiences quietly become part of their understanding of what a relationship is supposed to look like. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist and a pioneer in family therapy. He introduced the idea of what he called emotional cutoff. He observed that when relationships become emotionally overwhelming, some people cope by creating distance. They move away, they avoid conversations, they reduce contact, or eventually cut ties altogether. Now, I want to be careful here. Emotional distance is sometimes the healthiest choice. I want to remind you, like I said earlier, that in situations involving abuse or manipulation or ongoing harm, creating distance may be necessary and wise. I'm not suggesting that every estrangement is unhealthy, but what we are focusing on today is unhealthy estrangement, the kind that does not seem necessary or wise, and that pulls normal families apart. Dr. Bowen believed that while emotional cutoff becomes a family's default way of handling conflict, it can become a pattern that repeats itself from one generation to the next. You may have heard the term attachment styles. There are basically four: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. We're not going to go into detail about these attachment styles today. That may be a topic for another time. But just like conflict styles can be passed down generationally, so can attachment styles. Some people naturally feel safer working through conflict, while others feel overwhelmed by emotional closeness and instinctively pull away when relationships become difficult. And while there isn't any estrangement gene, there are personality traits that have some genetic influence. Things like emotional sensitivity, anxiety, or how strongly someone reacts to conflict. These traits can affect how intensely conflict is experienced. Then there's something else that researchers have spent years studying. It's called intergenerational trauma. Say that 3 times fast. Intergenerational trauma. Sometimes families carry unresolved pain on for generations. It may have originally come from abuse or addiction, abandonment, poverty, loss, or other painful experiences. Without realizing it, each generation passes along not only the stories, but the ways of coping. You may have seen this pattern with someone who lived through the Depression or who experienced war or other traumatic events. Sometimes this trauma gets passed down generationally. One generation learns to protect themselves by shutting people out. The next generation sees that as normal. And before long, no one remembers where the pattern began. Reason number 2. Remember, these are in addition to the reasons mentioned in part 1 of this 2-part topic. They may be in an experimental phase. And this actually has nothing to do with you at all. Sometimes people, especially adolescents and young people, but sometimes adults making major life changes, go through periods where they're asking themselves, who am I? What do I believe? What kind of life do I want? And what values are actually mine? During this process, people sometimes experiment. They may change their appearance, their beliefs, their relationships, their lifestyles, their careers, or their values. Sometimes these changes are minor, and sometimes they're dramatic. You likely know someone who fits this description. As people go through major life transitions, they often reconstruct the story they tell themselves about their lives. To create a coherent new identity, people may reinterpret past experiences through a new lens. For example, a childhood memory that once felt loving might now feel controlling. A parent's concern may now be interpreted as judgment. Family traditions may be viewed as supportive by one person and restrictive by another. That doesn't necessarily mean the new interpreting is wrong or that the old one was wrong. It means that our life stories evolve as our beliefs, our values, and our experiences change. This helps explain why two sincere people can remember the same event so differently. And if they anticipate criticism during this phase, or even simply experience disagreement, they may conclude, I'm not safe to be myself here. Now, whether they are actually unsafe is a different question. The important point here is that perception drives behavior. If someone genuinely believes they won't be accepted, they're much more likely to withdraw. And when people are trying to figure out who they are, they're often emotionally vulnerable. If they believe they're being judged, or even if they fear they might be judged, they may begin to feel that their relationship is emotionally unsafe. Those feelings can be intensified by guilt, shame, grief, fear, unresolved conflict. To make sense of those painful emotions, people sometimes focus on the way they've been hurt rather than on the complicated mix of factors that brought them to this point. Over time, distancing themselves from family can begin to feel like their safest option. Whether the reason for the estrangement is one of the 6 we talked about in part 1, or the 2 additional ones that we just talked about here, family culture or going through an experimental phase. Or perhaps there's another reason, because this is not an exhaustive list. Regardless of the reason, we cannot change another person's choices. The pain of having someone cut themselves off from a family can hurt very deeply as losing a family member to death at times. I once had it explained to me that divorce can be more painful than the death of a spouse, because in divorce, they're rejecting you and choosing not to be with you. Whereas when you lose a spouse through death, the pain of separation is just as real, but you know that person wanted to be with you. Family estrangement is similar. Losing a family member because they've chosen to reject and distance themselves can be just as or more painful than losing a family member to death when you know they wanted to be with you. One question I was asked following the first episode on estrangement was, if I'm doing all the things and I'm still hurting, what then? What comes next? How do I myself grieve, mourn, heal, and release? How do I accept? What does that process look like? Here are 6 possibilities. First, follow the Savior's example on letting your family members have their journey. My friend Sam pointed me to the story of the woman at the well from the New Testament. This woman had been married multiple times, and the man she was currently living with, she was not married to. Though she was a cast out from her community, Jesus showed her kindness and love. He didn't tell her to get her act together or even question her on why her life was the way it was. She was the first recorded person that he told that he was the Christ. This unconditional love without judgment helped this woman not only become a believer, but a great advocate on his behalf. The Savior's example was to show love regardless of another person's choices. Not chasing, not condemning, just love. Getting to a place to do that can be a challenge, and not one easily done alone. A wise friend of mine who has gone through much family heartache and has come to a place of great peace wisely told me that she absolutely could not have done it alone. Alone, she would have been bitter, but with the Savior's help, she was able to let go, forgive, feel peace, and love. Don't try to work through it alone. Yoke with the Savior and let him make your burdens light. Lay those heavy burdens at his feet and find rest to your weary soul. Second, remember that understanding is not the same as agreeing. Have you ever had the experience of being upset about something and then later when you understood why that person did what they did, the negative feelings went away? I've sure been there. It's different when someone cuts themselves off, though, because you don't have the opportunity to ask questions or to seek to understand. There's seemingly no reason that would justify that kind of action. But seeking to understand their reasons may help you heal and find peace. Seeking understanding on why someone estranged themselves doesn't mean that you approve of the decision. It doesn't mean the pain they caused isn't real. It simply means you're trying to understand the human experience behind that choice. When talking to someone is not going to be the way to find understanding because they won't talk to you, you may consider seeking clarification by personal revelation. Pray about it. Seek God's help in understanding and in finding peace. Understanding is often where healing begins. Let's slow down. Let's seek to understand what may be happening on both sides. Third, change your side of the family patterns. One of the leading researchers on family estrangement, Carl Pillemer, has found that estrangement is usually not the result of one single event, one big fight, or one misunderstanding. More often, it's the accumulation of years of hurt, misunderstandings, criticism, unmet expectations, value differences, or unresolved conflict. Many people in his studies described fractured relationships that stretched back through multiple generations. I find that both sobering and hopeful. Sobering because it reminds me that unhealthy relationship patterns can become part of a family's legacy if no one recognizes them and changes them. But hopeful because patterns are not permanent. Just because something has happened for 3 generations does not mean it has to happen for a 4th. We often inherit more than eye color or a smile. We may inherit ways of responding to hurt, disappointment, conflict, and fear. But inheritance is not destiny. Each one of us has the opportunity to pause and ask, is this a pattern I want to continue? We may not have chosen the family patterns we received, but we can choose the family pattern we leave behind. And maybe that's one of the greatest gifts we can give to the people we love. Not perfection, but a new direction. A direction toward curiosity instead of assumptions, toward conversations instead of silence, toward understanding instead of fear, toward love that keeps reaching even when the relationship becomes complicated. The idea here is to heal yourself first, change the pattern, and that in turn will heal your relationships. Fourth, be prepared for it to be a process. One friend who has been through the experience of having multiple family members leave, then come back, only to leave again, told me, be prepared for the moment when they come back, but also for the moment when they may leave again. Just give it time and keep the door open, but be prepared that it can and may happen again. So be mentally prepared in case it does. Be prepared that healing relationships is a process, not an event. Be prepared with a soft and truly forgiving heart, knowing that one who has left before may be in the process of healing too. And depending on their attachment style or other factors, they may leave again. Be prepared. Keep the Savior with you. Let him help you forgive and heal. He is the only one who can. Fifth, find peace and keep coming back to it. I was told this by a sweet woman who has 2 children, one of whom has estranged themselves from her family, taking grandchildren with them. She says that she thinks about it daily. After much struggle and with the Lord's help, she was finally able to get to a place of peace. And one of the things that helped her stay there was to ask herself, what is soothing? For her, one thing is listening to music sung by monks. It's called Gregorian chant. This sacred vocal music features unison singing without any instruments. She played some for me, and I too found it very soothing. What is soothing for you? It may be a certain type of music, like my friend. It may be spending time in a sacred place. It may be spending time talking to the Lord. It may be something else. I invite you to identify something that soothes you. And let me clarify, I'm not talking about addictive substances here. I'm talking about soothing practices instead. Something that invites the Savior in. What would that be for you? Number 6, and this is the other thing that my friend told me, have someone to talk to. It's very helpful to have someone to talk to, someone who's perhaps wise, emotionally healthy, particularly in tune, a good listener, someone that you can talk to and feel listened to and heard, and that can empathize and help you problem solve. Not just wallow, but problem solve. Get a person like that in your life because we all need someone to talk to and someone to support. There you have it. 2 additional reasons someone might cut themselves off from the family, plus 6 things to do to help you heal. These additional ways will help you as you grieve, mourn, heal, and accept. Know that it takes time and that everyone's process looks a little different. But as you yoke in with the Savior, you won't be doing it alone. If this episode has resonated with you, please share it with someone who could use hope in this area. And please join me again next time for another episode of Just Love Them.